I will be exploring the subversion of the conventions of the war film genre based on the culture of The Unknown Soldier and Inglourious Basterds. The two films chosen for the comparative study are relevant due to the nature of their genre. The Unknown Soldier agrees with many of the conventions of war films, and this is due to the culture of the film, as it is from Finland. Finland played a very small, yet impactful role in World War II, and the market for films about this war is small. This means that the film is much more accurate, especially when compared to Inglourious Basterds, which subverts the genre in many ways, including the accuracy of the war being portrayed. The film elements in the two films are very similar, but a couple key aspects within the film elements are different. Both of the films fall under the war genre, but differences in culture create the effect of a subversion of the genre seen in Inglourious Basterds and, to a lesser extent, The Unknown Soldier. World War II is an extremely popular topic in American films, from Charlie Chaplin's The Great Dictator to Steven Spielberg's Saving Private Ryan. The topic has been explored in many different ways, so any new film would likely have to approach the topic in a new and innovative way. Quentin Tarantino does this in Inglourious Basterds, as he told the New York Times, "I wasn't out to teach a history lesson. You can turn on the History Channel, which might as well be called the Hitler Channel. I just wanted to tell my story and have the same freedom I would have telling any story." Finland is very different from the United States in this respect, as there are very few Finnish films that depict World War II. Two of the most popular World War II films in Finland are actually the two original versions of The Unknown Soldier from 1985 and 1955. The lack of films that depict this war in Finland leave the market open for a more conventional war film, which The Unknown Soldier fulfills to an extent. Understanding the conventions of war films is important to move further in this comparative study. These conventions are plentiful and exist for very specific reasons. Both Inglourious Basterds and The Unknown Soldier begin their films with incredibly conventional shots, in that both films have a leader giving a quote-unquote pep talk to their troops.
Once we're in enemy territory, as a bushwhacking guerrilla army, we're going to be doing one thing and one thing only: killing Nazis.
Määräiset varusteet pois. Ja reppuun toinen alusvaate kerta, jalkarätit ja mantteli. Ja aseet tietysti.
These shots help put each leader on a pedestal, and the dialogue from each leader is representative of diminishing the opponents. The most conventional aspect of any war film is this particular idea of diminishing the opponents while promoting the home country and the leader. Quote, "A strong us," as both the first-person plural and a poetic acronym for the United States versus them narrative and sentiment arise in conventional war films, according to Jan Miller of University of Colorado. The Unknown Soldier does more to diminish the status of the opponent with its dialogue.
Kyllä sitä riittää äijää meittiäkin vasta. Mutta Suomen sotilas vastaa 10 ryssää. Kyllä kai.
While it is not through the dialogue, this does indeed exist throughout Inglourious Basterds, as Hitler, the enemy, is portrayed in a very negative way. The high angles used in many of the shots that involve Hitler are indicative of this, as well as the mise-en-scène of the large room and general fanciness that exists. This particular scene shows Hitler as less powerful, as the high angle on both him and the large painting of him in the background diminish his status as a leader. The close-up shots used show Hitler's facial expressions, which further emphasize this idea, as they show him heavily overreacting to a seemingly small detail. Look at this juxtaposed with the Americans in the film, who are seemingly working harder and are tougher than the fancy Hitler, as the dull colors and mise-en-scène of the clothing suggest. This juxtaposition shows how Inglourious Basterds promotes the status of the protagonist leader while diminishing the opponent. The agreement of Inglourious Basterds with this basic war film convention indeed proves that it is a war film. Now that Inglourious Basterds has been established as a war film, it is extremely different from many conventional war films and subverts the genre in many ways. The Unknown Soldier, although it is seemingly more conventional, is also a subversion of the war film genre, although to a lesser extent. Both of these films focus on the people, as opposed to the actual war, which is more appropriate for a drama as opposed to a war film. In Inglourious Basterds, the shots are focused on the facial expressions of many of the characters through the use of close-ups and slow zooms. The shot of Shoshana at the table with the leaders of Nazi Germany is very indicative of this philosophy. While the other people around the table are talking, her reaction is what is focused on, showing that the people are more important to the plot than the war itself. The slow zoom increases the dramatic tension of this moment and also puts emphasis on the specific facial expressions and where Shoshana is looking. In The Unknown Soldier, many of the fighting scenes use dollies to focus on a single soldier going through the battle. In one specific scene, a Finnish soldier is running through the crossfire and the camera tracks him. The editing in this scene is also important. Jump cuts go from people shooting back to a longer shot of the soldier. This establishes the setting and creates suspense for the soldier. These shots are short in length and are juxtaposed with lengthier shots of the soldier, which emphasizes that particular soldier over the war in its entirety. This, just like Inglourious Basterds, subverts the genre by focusing on the people, or in this case the soldiers, as opposed to the actual war. War being portrayed in both of these films is World War II, but the two films do not exactly portray World War II with complete accuracy, which is a subversion of traditional war films. Both films seek to tell a narrative as opposed to accurately providing details about the war itself. The subversion of realism in both of these films demonstrates the time period that the films were made, as well as the filmmaker's intention. The Unknown Soldier and Inglourious Basterds were made in 2017 and 2009, respectively. The modern nature of the films, and the almost 70-year removal from the event that these films are portraying, gives the directors the freedom to subvert realism and therefore subvert the genre. The extent to which these two films inaccurately portray World War II is important, however, as there are many differences between their common subversion of realism. The Unknown Soldier uses action shots throughout the film, but it glorifies trench warfare on many occasions. Trench warfare was awful and miserable, especially for a Finnish military that was incredibly low on resources. The Unknown Soldier does try to show that the war was miserable with the drab colors that exist throughout the film. Whenever the war is occurring, the colors are dark and blue, which is meaningful in that it conveys a solemn tone. This is juxtaposed with the shots of civilian life that are much more colorful and use the colors to convey the happiness that exists outside of the war. Look at these two different shots, both of similar intent, as they both introduce the setting with a long shot. However, the colors are wildly different, as they depict two different facets of life, war and civilian. This shows the juxtaposition that exists within The Unknown Soldier. Compare this with Inglourious Basterds, where, relative to The Unknown Soldier, bright colors are used throughout the film, no matter the situation. One of the only times that dark and drab colors are used is when the German film is showing in the theater. The color scheme in Inglourious Basterds is representative of the satirical nature of the film. Montage editing is a very important part to any war film, and both Inglourious Basterds and The Unknown Soldier use it to varying effects in their respective films. Inglourious Basterds adds to its satirical nature with its montages, especially the Hugo Stiglitz montage, shown now, which portrays a character that is very unconventional of war films. Stiglitz is a traitor, and while he is on the opposition, it is unconventional to portray a traitor in any war film. The montage editing in Inglourious Basterds is focused on the past and helps establish the plot of the film. This is wildly different from The Unknown Soldier, as the montage editing that is used is very conventional and shows the war moving along. Inglourious Basterds is created with the assumption that the audience knows much about World War II, while The Unknown Soldier is created with the assumption that Finland's involvement in World War II is much more unknown. This fact of cultural context explains why the extent of the subversion of the two films is different. The two films both subvert the war film genre in varying ways and to varying extents. The base subversion is due to the modern nature of the films, while the two films are different due to their respective cultures. The film elements add to this subversion of the genre while still following enough conventions that they can be considered war films.